So we're here at the Pennsylvania Historic Marker for Helen Furnace in Clarion County. Just west of this point can be seen the well-preserved interior of the cold blast furnace built in 1845. It is one of the numerous iron furnaces operated in Clarion County from about 1829 to 1867. The county then was often referred to as the Iron County. So I want to thank Kim in particular as one of those subscribers who has been sending in pictures of these different signs. This is a very unique, very cool furnace, as I talk about later in the video. These were sort of a stone's throw from one another, these different furnaces. This would have been a much smaller operation. It didn't last that long. They were very, very hard to be profitable, because especially when you were competing against the much larger furnace operations who also had forges, it really was an impossible undertaking. But thank you to Kim once again for sending this in for the viewer submitted video series for the Pennsylvania Historic Marker series. Thank you once again. So today we're visiting the Helen Furnace in Clarion County. This was actually built in about 1845, and they say it operated potentially into the 1860s, but it looks like about 1856. So this is one of those smaller furnaces that they were usually built by smaller companies, and a lot of times they just wouldn't last very long. You sort of had, a lot of these furnaces or forges less common, but the furnaces would have a habit of being stone's throws away from one another, and unless you were one of the big companies that were owned by the iron magnates, you usually didn't survive, and then these would get bought out by much larger companies, maybe stay in business for a short while, but ultimately they would just shut them down because they weren't profitable. This particular furnace was built by the W.S. Packer company, but they ran into financial problems quite quickly and sold out to a David Ritchie, and he owned the site for a limited time and then wound up selling the property to Samuel Wilson. And the Wilsons were a much larger, operation. They owned several properties in the area, and he operated it till it looks like about 1857. The furnace was originally named Highland. Also, the name sounded like Highland because it was Scottish. The furnace was named after Alexander McNaughton, who prided himself as being a Highlander in Scottish, and that Highland was H-I-E-L-A-N-D, which adapted over time to Helen. This is located just north of Clarion, PA. It's on the route to Cook Forest State Park. The site itself today, it's actually in quite good condition, as you can see with the pictures. The furnace itself is in excellent condition. The coolest thing that they have there is actually the bridge. I believe it's known as a charging bridge. This is where they would go and they would dump, which you can see right there. They dump the coal or the iron ore down in, and unfortunately, I guess one of the legs is broken, so right now you can't actually get on it to look down in the furnace itself. But hopefully that can be repaired, and then this would be a site that would be well worth visiting. I guess the foundation pit for the engine house is still there. There's also brickwork from some of the other surrounding buildings. So, these sites were quite extensive. Usually they had a lot of different buildings on site that would service along with the furnace. And but this is one of those smaller furnaces, really quite a neat place. A bunch of these still exist. We visited several, like the Swatera Iron Furnace near Pine Grove, Pennsylvania. We've also visited the Manada Gap furnace, and those were two versions of these older, I think they're known as Catalan. It's like a Spanish type furnace. these were the old styles of how they were built, in like usually the 1700s and into like even the mid 1800s, when they started to switch over to the newer rolling mills and the much more extensive furnaces, an industrial age type furnace. And then these were out of style, and that's another reason why this went out of business so quickly, because technically it got put out of business by the much newer and more efficient furnaces. So these are quite cool. Like I was saying, like the Swatera iron furnace, Helen Furnace here would be a good example of the furnaces that are still in really good condition. And you get a good idea of what they look like. The Helen Furnace probably even more, because you get to see some of the features that you wouldn't with the Swatera iron furnace, whereas the Man of the Gap iron furnace is in really poor shape. So that's on the other end of one that's been let go and has disintegrated over time. These are buildings that are nearly 200 years old. So with that, I will say thank you for coming along and checking us out. I will say thank you to Kim for sending the Pennsylvania Historic Marker picture. And this was a place that I believe, I want to note as well, they say it did as much as 1,500 tons per year, but more likely it was about 1,000, and it employed probably around 100 people. So it's still a big operation for the day. So with that, I'll say thank you, and we will see you all about town.